The moment the surveillance cameras at MacArthur BART station first captured Nia Wilson on the evening of the 22nd of July, 2018, none of the commuters walking briskly across the platform could have known they were witnessing the beginning of a tragedy that would soon grip the Bay Area and the nation. The CCTV footage shows three sisters, 18-year-old Nia, her older sister Letifa, and their sibling Tashia, as they stepped off a Bay Area rapid transit train after visiting relatives. For many, CCTV in a transit station is just a background detail of everyday life, but on that night, the cameras recorded something that would become central to every stage of the case that followed, a brutal, unprovoked attack that would end in murder and leave a community searching for answers.
My daughter called me crying hysterically. I couldn't understand what she was talking about. I see all the police and ambulance, and I run up the platform and I see my youngest daughter laying up under a tarp dead, you know? I want justice for my daughter. Please help me get justice for my daughter.
Nia and her sisters had boarded the train in Concord, California, after spending the evening at a family gathering. The night was warm, and like countless others, the sisters were heading home after a long day. The surveillance footage later showed them laughing and talking, unaware that a stranger was following them through the station. Minutes before the violent act, a man identified later as 27-year-old John Lee Cowell also appeared on camera, entering the station and moving through the crowd. There was no direct interaction caught on camera before the assault, but Cowell's presence in the station that evening, following the sisters from their arrival, became one of the key pieces of evidence linking him to the attack. As the three sisters reached the platform ready to transfer trains, the CCTV footage shows Cowell stepping closer, unnoticed by them but clearly visible in the background. Moments later, the violence erupted without warning. Surveillance cameras captured Cowell drawing a large knife and attacking Nia, slashing her neck in a gruesome moment that would be replayed throughout the investigation and trial. At the same time, Latifa was also struck in the neck but survived her wound. Tashia escaped physical harm but witnessed the horror unfold mere feet away from her. The footage revealed not just the attack but Cowell's deliberate actions. He pulled the knife, struck with precision, and then fled the platform seconds later. The surveillance video did more than just capture the assault. It recorded Cowell's movements immediately after the attack. The footage shows him leaving the station through an emergency exit and entering a nearby parking lot. There, Cowell was caught on camera, changing his clothes and discarding his backpack, an action that pointed to a consciousness of guilt and an attempt to conceal evidence. That transition from assault to escape was all caught on camera and provided law enforcement with a clear timeline of events that began with the sisters' arrival and ended with Cowell's flight from the scene. Within minutes of the attack, BART police and emergency responders were on the platform. First, responders attempted to save Nia's life, but her injuries were catastrophic. She had been cut deeply across her neck, slashing major arteries, and she bled to death within minutes. Letifa's wound, while severe, was survivable, and she was rushed to a hospital where she received treatment and later provided key testimony about what she remembered from the assault. Tashia, although unharmed physically, was left traumatized by the violent loss of her younger sister and by witnessing her sister's collapse. In the immediate aftermath, as the BART platform became a crime scene and commuters stood shocked, law enforcement began analyzing the surveillance footage in real time. Every angle was scrutinized, key moments were isolated, and timestamps were meticulously logged. Investigators quickly realized that this was not a random act of violence by an unknown assailant. The CCTV footage showed clearly that the suspect had followed the sisters for several minutes before the attack and had acted with purpose. The clarity of the station's video system, which recorded high-definition images from multiple points around the platform and adjacent areas, meant officers could trace the suspect's path from the moment he entered the station to the point where he escaped through the parking structure. Once the footage was reviewed and the suspect was identified from images, BART police released stills and video segments to the public, asking for help in identifying the man seen in the recordings. Tips from the community came in quickly. Dozens of witnesses reported recognizing the suspect from the images, and several identified him as John Lee Cowell, a man with a criminal history who had been on parole. Cowell's name and details matched what law enforcement was able to pull from their records, and agents began coordinating a targeted search for him across the Bay Area. Investigators learned that Cowell had been released on parole only months earlier following a second-degree robbery conviction, and that his past included multiple arrests for assault and possession of illegal substances. Officers also discovered that he had been riding the same train as the Wilson sisters from the time they boarded in Concord, a fact corroborated by the time-stamped footage showing him seated and then trailing them throughout the journey. With that timeline, authorities were able to narrow down his likely exit points and track his movements as he fled the scene after the assault. Less than 24 hours after the attack, law enforcement located Cowell at Pleasant Hill BART station based on community tips and careful cross-referencing of the recorded footage with transit records and public camera systems. He was taken into custody without incident, ending a frantic search that relied heavily on the CCTV evidence that began at MacArthur. Officers noted his calm demeanor at the point of arrest, a stark contrast to the sudden violence recorded on camera the previous night. Cowell was immediately booked on charges that included first-degree murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and parole violation for the unprovoked knife attack that claimed Naya's life and severely injured her sister. Prosecutors also added a special circumstance charge of lying in wait, a legal enhancement used when a suspect hides or watches for a victim before killing them, which increases the severity of possible punishment and could lead to life imprisonment without parole or even the death penalty. In the early stages of the legal process, Cowell's defense entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, drawing attention to his history of mental illness and suggesting that he had been incapacitated at the time of the attack. Court records showed that Cowell had previously been diagnosed with conditions, including schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. His attorney pursued a fast track to trial with the intent to focus on his mental state as the central issue in his defense. San Francisco Chronicle, however, before the case could proceed to the full trial, the court held competency hearings to determine whether Cowell was mentally capable of standing trial. Multiple court-appointed doctors evaluated him over several months. One found him incompetent, another found him competent, and a third was unable to conclude. Ultimately, in early 2020, a judge ruled that Cowell was mentally competent to stand trial, allowing the prosecution to move forward with presenting the full case against him. The trial attracted intense public interest and emotional testimony. Prosecutors argued that Cowell's actions were deliberate and calculated, pointing not just to the CCTV footage of the attack itself, but also to the suspect's behavior after the murder. In recordings shown to the jury, Cowell was seen directing police officers to the platform and away from his escape route, discarding his backpack and changing clothes shortly after fleeing the scene, actions prosecutors described as goal-oriented and inconsistent with the defense's claim of a spontaneous, psychotic breakdown. During the trial, the CCTV footage from MacArthur Station was replayed multiple times. Jurors watched the sequence of events unfold, the sisters entering the platform, Cowell trailing behind, the sudden assault, and Cowell's cool departure from the scene. For many on the jury, seeing the unaltered camera footage was critical in understanding the timeline and premeditated nature of the attack, a reality that became the central pillar of the prosecution's case. In March 2020, the jury reached a verdict. After relatively brief deliberations, Cowell was convicted of first-degree murder for the killing of Naya Wilson and premeditated attempted murder for the injury inflicted on Letifa Wilson. In addition, the jury found true the special circumstance of lying in wait, confirming that Cowell had concealed his intent before launching his attack. At the sentencing hearing in July 2020, Judge Alan Heimer imposed life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for Cowell's conviction, reflecting the gravity of his actions and the overwhelming evidence against him. During the hearing, family members delivered emotional statements, confronting Cowell with the human toll of his crime and expressing the deep wounds that would last long after the courtroom proceedings